Vaughan is a writer of poetry, and that is kind of the primary reason we're in the studio with you.
Thank you,
Hey,
Glenn.
kia ora, Vaughan, how are you?
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure. to
Definitely
have
the
you here.
library is one of my favourite places in Whangarei.
Is it now?
Oh, absolutely.
Fantastic. That's
Great.
good to hear. Well, what is it about the library that you like, or what draws you to the
books
library?
is good.
Yeah.
And every time I put in a request for a book, that they seem to purchase it, which is lovely. So maybe I'm just choosing the right books, but yeah, that's really nice.
Let me just set up this microphone quickly.
And it's just a great space, I think, as well, architecturally. You kind of walk down those stairs from the second floor and you think you're really important. Kind of
Yeah.
Descending and, you're
nice.
almost waiting for the crowd to kind of clap you down the stairs. So.
It's a royal procession.
Yeah. And that's what a library should be. Yeah,
Cool. I wonder if that's what the architects had in mind.
yeah
Maybe.
maybe.
You're the first person that's ever said that the stairs make you feel good in that way, but that's really cool.
You're going down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I take the elevator up and then just cruise the
I
stairs
suppose if you
down.
work there, it's very good at tiring. But
No,
yeah.
not at all. No, that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for coming in today, Vaughan. Appreciate your time. And we've come, well, for a starter, to talk about your new book of poetry, or your recent book, which is called, and I love this title, Lunchtime Thoughts of a Gallery Attendant at the End of the World.
Yep, a little bit of a mouthful, but yes.
No, fantastic title. When did you publish this book?
Self-published last year, and I'm doing another print run. So I'm just sort of distributing them. Really, I'm not sort of trying to get money from them. Really, so so I'm making a bit of a push this year to get it through bookshops and get some reviews, possibly.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's the
Great.
plan. Yeah.
Excellent.
So this helps, I guess. Yeah.
So when did it come out? Was it late last year?
Yeah, late last year. Yeah. Yep.
And how did this? So the book called Lunchtime Thoughts of a Gallery Attendant at the Bottom of the World. How did this?
We'll abbreviate that for the rest of the lunchtime thoughts.
Lunchtime Thoughts it is. I was going to see if we can turn it into an acronym, but I'm not sure if that's going to work.
No,
But
I'd forget it. Yeah, we'd forget it.
how did this book come about?
Most of the poems were written actually 10 years ago, while I was sort of running the Jeff Wilson Gallery at Northtec. So I was sort of gallery coordinator there, I guess, at that time. So spending a lot of time sitting in the gallery alone with the occasional visitor, surrounded by art and white walls, and at the time I was doing quite a lot of reading on climate change and all the sort of ecological challenges that the world faces, and probably some deep sort of theorists, speculating on, what our future is really
Right.
on this planet. So, so those two things I think combined in a way to create the poems, and I just wrote them. And as you do, you kind of whatever reason you wrote poetry for, I don't know.
Yeah.
So they sat around for a while until I thought, I need to do something with these. Some of them were published. They were sent to a few places. One of them was published in the New Zealand Listener.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember
Right.
now. Yep.
Okay. Because I found it very entertaining, the book of poems. They were fantastic. Some of them were funny, and some of them I could really empathise with. Working in a library must share some similarities with working in a gallery, I suppose.
Yeah.
As in, sometimes you can be in a quiet space, sometimes with no one or not many people.
Yep.
Mobile library would be another good example. I could be sitting in the mobile library somewhere waiting for people to come in, and you're left to your own thoughts. And is that what was happening to you during the day?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got sort of, if you're sitting in a gallery often on your own for 7 hours, you either go mad or you get creative, I guess. So it was the two of those options, perhaps both combined. Fine line. It definitely came out of that situation, that context.
Yeah.
Also, I was probably going through a little bit of a crisis of belief
Right.
I'd been at the Northtec for 12 or so years and probably was thinking maybe I needed to move on to something else.
Okay.
The art world perhaps kind of wasn't doing, been to art school and been around the art world for quite a while, I guess. And so I think there was some thoughts going through my head about what the future, my own future, kind of decision making, I needed to make. So yeah, so there's all those things
Mix
up.
So I was going to ask, was there a theme to it? Because there seemed to be, I imagined maybe just with the title of it that it was all written during quiet times at the gallery. Almost.
Just about all of them are. There'd be a few poems that I might have chucked in that came a bit later.
Yeah.
But sort of felt that they fitted within the overall thing.
Because there's a definite collection vibe going on.
Yeah. And it's also. It's probably not necessarily me all the time. I was conscious of the idea of a persona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yes, though I've just talked about things that might have been going through my head. There's also a conscious effort to kind of go, okay, I'm this person in this gallery space, and I'm adopting a sort of persona, and speaking through that a little bit. So some of the poems are perhaps a little bit more cynical and pessimistic. Yeah, that side of my persona, I guess, or the created persona. So it's not necessarily how I feel all the time. So to quote me, in a sense, what I've written as being something that I necessarily would say or believe. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I was with you on some of the things. It's like, I know what you feel about that. What's the response been to the book?
The people that have read it, which probably at this stage aren't too many, I guess, but it's been really positive. Yeah. So people have enjoyed it. I suppose you don't hear from the people that haven't. So, but those that have given me some feedback, it's been good. So I haven't sent them out yet to places to get reviewed. So that's the project that I'm sort of starting now. So we'll get them sent out over the next month.
Who do you send it to?
Well, there's various poetry journals and poetry magazines. There's a few online ones. So yeah, anywhere where poetry is reviewed.
Okay.
So that matters, I guess, if people are going to read it. If you can get reviewed in Listener, for instance, would be great.
Yeah.
Not that necessarily will happen, and Landfall, obviously, is another one.
We have that one in the library too, I think, don't we?
Yeah. And they have an online review site as well.
Okay.
So, and just send it out and see what happens, obviously.
Is that an exciting time when you get to send it out?
Yeah, it is. It is. Also, you might get a review, which could be negative as well. So that can be a little bit sort of.
Well, I would imagine that could be kind of a bit daunting sending out your poems.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah. No, I mean, the fact that it's taken me 10 years is probably suggests some hesitancy.
I think you should send it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Hey, do you have a favourite one? Is there a standout poem that you love the most out of there?
I don't know if there's a favourite. No. But yeah, to me, it is a collection, as you sort of talked about. I think they gain a strength from being read together. I think there are some, perhaps some poems that do work on their own, but I think they gain something from the narrative, or they're all reading through them and
I felt there was kind of a narrative, but I imagine you didn't write them in that sequence necessarily.
No,
do you have to then?
No, and that for me takes ages of constant jostling.
Yeah.
And there's a couple in there where I think, even now, I don't know, is that the right position for that poem?
Yeah, right.
Though that really matters to me. Because I'm imagining a reader, going through in order, and how are they where am I taking them on that journey? And what are the intervals or the highlights or the negatives or whatever through that journey, and how each poem relates to the one before.
It's a bit like with a music album, isn't it? You're trying to take people on a bit of a trip.
It's very similar to an album. Yeah, and the decisions that you make, where to put the songs, because they make a difference. Yeah.
Even down to, you look at the subject content, the rhythm of the whole poem. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, it's more probably the subject content. Sometimes it's just simple things like sort of separating the longer poems, so they're not all together, because that can look a bit strange in a book if you put all the long poems all together. So I guess that's to do with the rhythm of the book in some ways. but it's definitely I feel there's a beginning to the book. I'm setting the stage, and then it moves through, and it gets a bit darker at times, but there's a bit of humour and a bit of a lift towards the end, perhaps. Yeah.
No, I felt there was quite a lot of humour all through it.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm a cynical person.
Yeah.
Enjoying that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Are you comfortable to read one to
Yes,
us?
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to?
Yeah, no, I've got one
pick
that I thought I'd read.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, cool. So this one's called "I'm Not a Painter." So I'll give a bit of context as well, which gives a bit of context to the book as well, because there's a a guy called Frank O'Hara, who's an American New York poet who worked, I think I get this right, for the Museum of Modern Art in New York. But he wrote quite a, reasonably sort of famous book of poems, which he called Lunchtime poems.
Ah.
Yeah. So part of the inspiration for this was that book. So he would go in his lunch hour, he would walk off around New York, and he supposedly wrote these poems on his lunch break. So I sort of quite like that idea. Oh. And one poem that he wrote was called "I'm Not a Painter," and he expresses some of his ideas about painting, amongst other things. So part of this poem is a kind of a response to his poem. Yeah. So it's called "I'm Not a Painter." I'm not a painter. I'm someone sitting in a gallery at the front end of the 21st century, at the back end of the end of an epoch. And I'm writing because the words just roll on from each other like this, and you don't have to wait for the paint to dry, and you're not left with a painting you have to put somewhere, in a gallery or in the home of a wealthy collector. Just words on a screen. And it's the end of the day writing this poem, which has nothing to do with my job, or perhaps everything to do with my job. Everything to do with sitting here, waiting for the next person to come in. Or thinking about what I need to do to organise the next load of art to be trucked in here. And all this is so mundane now, Frank. It must have been exciting to write about orange, or to paint sardines in New York in 1957, before it all petered out. Still, I have this wistful, envious nostalgia, and I'm hoping something good will roll out and onwards for a few more years, even decades. And I agree, there's many ways you can write about orange, if you don't think it's just a colour, but something you can ride on, kick about, poke your finger into, lick as well as suck. It's 10 minutes before 5, when the doors can be closed, and I can finally go home. But it feels good right now, every tap of the keyboard echoing off the gallery walls. It sounds like I've got something to say, and it needs to be said. Until it rolls no more, and the words are leaving like the cars that have started rolling past the gallery and out the gate.
Fantastic. Love it. Yeah, well, you get a real sense, do you agree, Andy, about being in the gallery?
Yeah.
This is what I loved about your book of poems. Yeah.
Yep.
How many books of poetry have you written before?
This will be the 4th, I guess. And then there's the compilation one as well, I guess.
Yeah.
So sort of 5 that I've been involved with. So, yep.
So one of the other ones we've got here, and we know about these partly because they were in the library.
Oh,
Yeah.
Definitely this one. It's another collection of yours.
have they ever gone out?
We could find out
No,
for you.
no, I don't want to know.
Well, we won't tell you then. We'll
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
but we won't tell you.
Yeah.
This one called "This Hill," all it's about is lifting it to a higher level. That's a nice one.
Yeah.
And this other cool one, which was what would you call that when a group of you come together?
I don't know. Yeah, I used the word compilation, but
was
I'm
gonna
not
say
sure that sounds right. But
An ensemble cast of poets?
Yeah.
No.
So that's 7 Whangarei poets, or 7 poets that were based in Whangarei for a time. Yeah.
And we definitely have this one in the library too. This is Take Flight, a poetry collection. That's fairly recent, isn't it? Is that
Yeah.
2020?
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
I've got this one, Big Love Songs.
Yes.
That's a cool cover.
Yeah, from a friend of mine. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You mentioned you went to art school.
Yeah.
What did you study in art school?
I I guess I was in the painting department, but yeah, so it was at AUT.
Okay.
For 4 years. I got a bit conceptual. I
Right.
realised I wasn't a very good painter,
Okay.
so I had to work out what I might do. But yeah, I actually got interested in writing, so I did a bit of art criticism at the time, and we set up a gallery in Auckland, some friends of ours, in our last final year,
Okay.
which went on to run for 15 or 20 years, I think.
Really?
Actually, after that.
Were you running it?
No. It sort of had a revolving cast of people.
Okay.
Yeah, but a friend of mine, he lasted for a long time and kept it going with different
Yep.
characters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm.
So you've got a history of art galleries then.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. No, I spent some time in them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you want to go back and work in an art gallery again?
No, probably not. No,
Okay.
no. I think
I got that sense from the poetry book that maybe you were done with it.
Yeah, I think you can move on. Some things in life you enjoy them, and then it's time to move on.
Are you writing poems all the time?
Yes, I tend to. They tend to sort of fall out of me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I keep telling. Sometimes I say, "I'm not going to write anymore." No, there's nothing more to say, or I've got nothing. And somehow they kind of sneak out.
Okay. So
What
inspires you to write a poem?
Usually it's something that I experience that I think is moving to me in some way.
Yep.
Yeah, or something connects in an odd way and you think, oh, okay. So I mean, that, for instance, the other day I was just walking the dog, and it's one of the things. It's probably an easy thing to do, but sometimes it's just hard at the end of the day when you've had a hard day and working to get out the door and walk the dog. But it was after rain, so this time it was after it had rained, and the sky and the landscape just had this sort of freshness to it. And then I'd just done the dishes, so I kind of made this connection between the world outside and me walking the dog and the dishes. So to me, I sort of combined these two things.
Right.
And so I used some of the language of doing the dishes to what I was experiencing walking the dog and the Hikarangi sort of landscape. So that kind of thought probably just sort of came to me, and then I went home and thought, that's probably worth exploring. Yeah.
Right. And so what's your process from there? Like, you write down your initial poem that you might come up with, and then do you revise and edit?
Yeah, sure. So sometimes for me, I like to kind of just let it sit in my mind for a little while. Mm-hmm. So it's not, sometimes I'll just go straight to it, but other times because sometimes I don't want to sneak up on it too much. I don't know, because the moment's there, that there's something there, but you're also kind of a little bit apprehensive about you're going to spoil the moment, and you're going to lose it, whatever it is that's gone through your head. Because I don't, when I sit down to write something, I don't know what's going to come out necessarily,
right.
but I can feel that there's something there that's, if I start typing words out, that something will happen. But so for me, I'm not. All my poems are written quick. I can't. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that can plan a poem. Like, I couldn't write a great big long rhyming poem to save myself, because I'd just get bored and it just wouldn't interest me. Most of my poems are a moment. Yeah, that come from a moment of experience and then translated into a moment of writing. So there will be some revision, but it'll be most of the time the poem is kind of pretty complete within a pretty short amount of time, and then there'll just be if might be a few phrases that I could do better than that, so I could possibly change those, but that's generally the process.
Okay.
But having said that, I do sit on them for a long time after that to see how I feel about them. Yeah, because it takes me a while to decide if they're any good. Yeah, and that could be years.
What's your success rate? Do you discard a lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot never see the light of day.
And how would you know it's a good one?
Oh, true. Yeah.
No. How do you decide it's a good one?
If it's just somehow still resonates with me, I guess, in some way. So I'm not necessarily relying on anyone else reading it. It's just my own judgment of it, I guess. If there's something there that I feel is worthwhile. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a complex writer, and by any means. So, and that's not what I'm interested in, really.
Yeah.
I do, I don't want to communicate with poetry academics or, that's just not me. Yeah. So, so I'd like something that's reasonably simple, but has some depth to it, so that the sort of subtleties maybe reveal themselves a little bit later. So on the surface, you might think, oh, that's quite a simple poem. That's quite accessible. I can get something out of that. I can relate to it. But for me, if it's a good poem, there might just be some little subtleties in the language that you might go back to and think, okay, that's kind of interesting. But not in a sort of a whiz-bang kind of a way. Definitely not one of those writers. Yeah.
So let's say you've got your collection of poems together and you want to publish it.
Yep.
Or put it out in the world.
Yep.
What's your? Is there one thing, or is there multiple things you can do?
Well, you can send them off to all the different poetry journals and online sites in New Zealand and around the world. I guess I don't do enough of that. I'm not sure quite why. Probably just busy and having kids and life. It's something that both my kids have just now. My youngest son is off to university this year. For some reason, that feels like I've got more headspace to maybe do some of the things I should do to maybe promote the poems and get them out there a little bit more. So that is definitely kind of the plan. I mean, the Lunchtime Thoughts is just self-published because it is a small book, I guess. And it's easy enough to do. And I like the process of designing the book and doing that all myself. I'm not very good at letting other people do stuff.
So you did that all yourself through some online website, I presume, or something?
It's just.
Or did you just get a local printer to do it? Or?
There's a place in Christchurch that I've used. Yeah, so the other Take Flight one there was done there. This Hill, that was actually published by Steele Roberts in Wellington, so that was actually done by them. So
harder to let your baby go into someone else's hands.
I think I'm probably like a bit of a control freak in that regard.
All the best people are control freaks.
Okay. Fair enough. I
mean, some people might presumably go out and you've got a new poem and go and perform it, but you mentioned when I spoke to you earlier that that's not really your thing.
I do prefer poetry on the page. It's how I enjoy poetry. Sometimes, I don't mind listening to obviously people read their poems. Often I'm just not quick enough to really get it. When someone's reading it, it's kind of sort of washes over you quite quickly. Whereas I feel like if I'm going to get something out of a poem, I kind of do need to see it on the page and see a bit more of the subtlety of the detail. So that's a personal thing. Also, I think when someone reads a poem, you're inescapably confronted with a living, breathing, real person who you might know or for some reason don't, their charm doesn't work on you, or you just, you see, there's a whole lot of things going on when you see a real person read a poem that I don't think you necessarily get when you read a poem in a book. There's not a physical relationship with that person. So I quite like that distance. Whereas for me, someone reading a poem, there's very much a person there. Well,
even the poem you read, I realised my voice inside my head from reading that poem is slightly different to your voice. So
absolutely.
It's like it takes on straight away a different
So,
interpretation.
Exactly. So someone reading a poem, and even if it's the author, is loading that poem in a way that the reader might not necessarily load it. So.
I'm going to just hand the mic over to you, Andy.
Oh, thanks. So this is slightly related, but I'm one of those people when I read poetry or hear it spoken, I sometimes have a little trouble comprehending it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I loved your your description of poetry is sometimes being a moment in time. At open mic night once back at uni, a guy described poetry or song lyrics as like a picture, and I've taken that to heart. But I was wondering if you had any advice for other poetry readers on comprehending poetry, something that might help them.
First thing I would say is just read what you like.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's so much poetry out there that I don't think you necessarily need to labour at something. I mean, maybe there's things to be gained, I guess, from reading some of the classic poems and trying to figure them out. But advice. I mean, some people read them out loud. So that's not personally something necessary that I've done too much of. I guess what works for me is just being in the right frame of mind to open yourself up to the poem. So for me, that would be finding a nice space. Like spaces, when I read, the space that I read in is often important. I mean, I love going to a cafe and reading a book. I mean, I think it's just something, I don't know why, you're sort of reading in public, which seems like an odd thing to do, but I just find that a lovely space to read and write, to be honest.
Time and place is important. Yeah.
But also just, I think, around the home, for me, it's a Sunday morning when the sun's out early and... I think, if to answer the question, it would be creating the right moment and the right space to read the poem. Okay. I think would be, for me, probably the most important thing.
When I was an English student, sometimes it was a struggle for me to, I've got a highlighter and a pen, and I have to begrudgingly say what an Emily Dickinson poem means. And sometimes I think, is it so simple to just say, what does this actually mean beyond what it says?
Yeah. I don't know, because I haven't done that kind of study with poems. So I haven't been, I suppose I did some at school, yes, but not too much. So for me, poetry is definitely something that's non-academic, and no one sort of... I haven't got any memories of people kind of, forcing me to decipher the meaning of Shakespeare, I guess. Yeah. So again, my poetry reading is just stuff that I like. I mean, I suppose one reason that I started writing poetry was I discovered a guy called Charles Bukowski. The American
Love
poet.
him.
Yeah. And he's quite simple, and he's a rogue, and it's entertaining, and he's got just lovely line breaks, everything sort of, which creates this rhythm, And he doesn't rhyme, and he doesn't use complex words, and so for me, and I just enjoyed, before I even had any thoughts about writing poetry at all, I just very much enjoyed, and if I came across his books, I bought them. And, and I just thought, this guy's great.
That does get to one of my other questions about your inspirations, but I love Charles Bukowski. His books are brilliant.
And again, one of the criticisms you can make of Charles Bukowski is that he never wrote any great poems. but he how I would read him is a sequence of, I almost read him like a novel. You just sit down and you just read all these poems, and there's all these experiences. And yes, there's probably not a great poem there, but the overall impact or the overall effect, I think, is quite profound in terms of what he was saying. And just I found just an enjoyable experience. So I know he's not, some poets would, probably would look down at him perhaps a little bit, I think.
Perhaps.
Who are doing a different type of poetry, and that's fine. But I think he's been quite influential on inspiring, some people to put, their thoughts on a page.
It's very modern. That's how I found his poetry. Like I said, sometimes I struggle reading poetry, but I read his and I thought, okay, this is not Samuel Coleridge. This is
exactly
accessible.
And it's the language, you could argue, of the 20th century. Or,
yes.
I know we're in the 21st century now, but I know what you're saying. It's Coleridge was writing for his time, obviously, and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is, pretty brilliant. But but some of those poems can be difficult to read, but maybe a lot of the difficulty is just the context, the historical gap that we now have with those poems. Yeah.
I hope this question isn't too literary, but so we've discussed Coleridge. We've heard of Romantics, Modernists, Postmodernists, the Beat generation. Where are we now? Is there a literary movement?
I'm not the person to ask that one. Yeah, I have no idea.
Perhaps it's too vast now.
Yeah, I think it is. It's
Yeah.
like music. It's just everything's just sort of splintered.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think you could put those kinds of labels
Yeah.
on it anymore.
The isms. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, though having said that, what I'm interested, getting back to maybe some of the themes or ideas that were in my head when I wrote Lunchtime Thoughts, I think the world is, in my kids' time, is going to be transformed, and not necessarily in a good way. I think a lot of the institutions and structures and things that we take for granted in the modern world, I really don't think, and I'm not trying to sound like a nutter here, but I just don't think will last. And I think that will have effect on art as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that art galleries, as they currently exist, are going to be around in 100 years. I think, once the fossil fuel kind of crisis or whatever starts to kick in, I think it affects so many things in our economy and government and community. That, funding of some of these things, I think, is going to be difficult and maybe not justifiable, maybe, And I think maybe it will be more sort of, grassroots people doing things in their communities around poetry, art, music, and maybe some of these centralised structures might not be around. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, that's an
That
interesting.
that could affect poetry. Yeah.
Could do.
So, yeah.
Well, it could go back to the people, just in terms of people telling poems
Yeah.
to tell information. I don't know.
Yeah. It could be community publications that, and you're not so much focused on this idea of getting your poem out to a national audience or whatever. It might be quite happy to just be sort of a local thing.
Yeah. Speaking of local, if you're a local poet in Whangarei, is there much of a scene of poetry that goes on?
I'm probably not too involved in it at the moment, but yes, there is. So Pete Newland is a key person who organises some get-togethers and some poetry reading.
Yep.
So he'd be a person to contact. And there's definitely some writers out there that would be writing poems and contributing to different things.
Yep.
So Pete puts out a publication that comes out maybe twice a year called Fast Fibres.
Yep.
So if there's anyone who is writing poems, I think he's more than happy to receive poems to get published in that. So that's probably the main thing that's happening.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So people should just probably jump online and search for Pete Newland, which is PIET,
Yeah.
and Fast Fibres.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've got those books in our library as well, if you
Sure.
want to come and have a look at them. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. Before we let you go, we're going to play a song you've requested in a minute. But just can you tell us briefly about your shop, Vine Street Vinyl?
Yeah. Well, it's an accident, a happy accident.
Right.
So me and my partner, we run Kiwi Cakes on Vine Street, and we moved down there sort of just before COVID hit from Carmo, and so I had a bit of an office there that was in a state of disrepair, and I also had a record collection, too many records I've bought over many decades. So I just started selling to raise a bit of money, started selling some of my own collection, and people just keep walking in the door to buy them because I put a sign out front. And then some record distributors contacted me because they thought it was really funny that someone was selling records in a cake shop.
Right.
And they sent me their wholesale list. So I thought, okay, I can buy all these records and sort of sell them. And
Okay.
So I turned my office into a record store, I guess. So it's been as a sort of proper looking record store. It's been functioning for a year. And,
Right.
And it seems to be working. People are just really enjoying having a place to just browse physical product,
Yeah.
vinyl and CDs in Whangarei, so which wasn't here before. Warehouse got rid of their CD and record
did they?
collection, so there's
Okay.
there's no one in Whangarei that was selling records in a physical store. There's a few. There's the Badger and a few other people
Yep.
doing things, but. Yeah, so the response has been really great, and I'm really enjoying it. Just the people that are coming in, and
I was going to ask you about that. I wondered if there were some similarities between working in a record shop and working in a gallery.
I think so. Yeah.
And when is the lunchtime thoughts of a music shop? I know, going to come out.
Yeah, that has crossed my mind. And definitely. Yeah, there's scope for responding to. I've always perhaps. The idea I have had, which relates to that, is somehow writing poems in response to songs or albums. Yeah, and just a book of poems, which was almost just a direct response to particular songs. I'm not sure what that would
That's
look
a cool
like.
idea.
But that's something that's has percolated for a while. Whether I'll ever do it, I don't know. But
Well, it's a good thing to percolate on. So, it's a cool space you've set up there for the record shop. It's looking really cool.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
that's upstairs in the Kiwi Cake shop,
Yep.
Vine Street Vinyl. I encourage you to check it out. Have you been had a look, Andy?
I have. I actually bought a CD there. I haven't listened to it yet, I admit. I think it was John Lee Hooker.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic, Vaughan. Good luck with your record shop and your publishing further your Lunchtime Thoughts book.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Glenn and Andy, for inviting me along.
you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks so much for your time. Now, you've chosen a song for us to play. I believe, or you've just stepped away from the mic, but can you tell us a bit about who you've chosen?
I've just chosen a track from Troy Kingy's latest album. I think that's the one we're going to play. Yeah, so I've just been enjoying it in the record store. It's mainly an instrumental album.
Have you got it on vinyl?
Yes, I've got it on vinyl. Yes, yes. It's one of the problems I've found running the record store is there's a lot of stuff that ends up at home. So
Yeah.
yes, So my record collection is growing. Yeah, so which is probably not quite the strategy, but
I thought that the purpose was to reduce your record collection. So you started a music shop, and now have you been reading the book High Fidelity or watching the movie?
Well, I watched the movie.
Yeah.
So,
I do sympathise with the idea that you. Sorry. Yes, sorry, I was speaking to the microphone. Someone was telling me a story from that book where, and I can't remember it from the movie, but that he would basically refuse to sort of sell certain things to people. So,
That was
I kind of.
Jack Black's character.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of sort of people wander in asking for. I won't mention any artist just in case I offend, but you think, roll your eyes and say no, or wearily trudge out to the CDs and see if I've got it.
yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome, cool, thank you.
All right, so this is Troy Kingy with a new song called Bastard.